In an inn, Yusuf worked late beside an oil lamp. Students argued about God and why life hurts. Yusuf didn't answer. He pointed to the flame. 3 moths circled it. The first flew close, felt warmth, retreated. I know the fire. The second came nearer until its wings smoked. Now I understand. The elders shook their heads. Then the third moth surrendered its whole body. No return, vanishing into light. Yusuf whispered, "That one knows, and that is why it cannot speak." This is the paradox of awakening. The deeper the truth, the less it fits language. Knowing does to decorate the ego. It dissolves the one who wants certainty. In our era of anxiety, we keep demanding answers to a transformation that starts as a death. The persona cracks, old habits rot, the false self blackens. Tonight we enter the 7 valleys. Quest, love, knowledge, detachment, unity, bewilderment, annihilation. Through Sufi psychology, Jung's shadow and self, and the alchemical furnace. Nigredo, albedo, rubedo. Centuries earlier, when caravan roads stitched Nishapur to Baghdad, a wandering calligrapher named Samir carried no weapons, only blank paper. He moved through markets where sermons grew loud and hearts grew tired. Empires argued over doctrine, while ordinary people carried a quieter burden: grief, envy, panic, and the ache of meaninglessness. Samir said the real war is inside. Law is the shell. The kernel is a change of seeing. So the mystics hid their science in parables, because direct truth feeds the ego, and the ego will either worship it or kill it. Jung later mapped the same territory with new symbols. Shadow, anima, animus, the self for different language, same inner mechanics. The 7 valleys are pressure chambers where the personality is stripped, purified, and reformed. Nigredo's blackening, albedo's whitening, rubedo's reddening. If you feel stuck, numb, or chronically anxious, you are not broken. You are in the first heat of the work. The flame is already calling. Valley 1. Quest, Talib. It begins with a wound, not a choice. A crack in the story you've been living. One morning you wake and the life you built feels like a borrowed coat, successful, presentable, and suffocating. A woman named Lena once told her therapist, "Nothing is wrong, and that's what's wrong." She had routines, goals, a relationship, yet every night her chest tightened as if an animal was trapped inside. Jung would call this the ego sensing the self, an inner totality pressing from below. The persona can hold it anymore. In Sufi language, this is Talib. The seeker is hunted by longing, not curiosity, not self-improvement. A thirst that makes distractions taste like dust. You scroll, you work, you date, you numb. Yet the question grows louder. Is this all? The practical act is brutal. Radical honesty. Name the lie you keep repeating. Because Talib is Nigredo's first sign. When the old identity begins to rot, and that rotting is mercy. Talib has a shadow. It can become performance. The ego loves to seek it, if seeking makes it special. It collects books, watches documentaries, learns new words, alchemy, archetypes, initiation, while staying unchanged. The Sufis warned against this. Seeking that never burns is only tourism. So the first valley demands a sacrifice. Not money, not hair shirts, a simpler offering. Stop feeding the habit that keeps you asleep, the one you defend as not a big deal. The late night loop, the sugar comfort, the porn trance, the endless doom scroll, whatever dulls the signal. Jung would call it confronting the shadow, the rejected part that runs your life from the basement. In Taleb, you don't fight it with moralism. You turn and look. You ask, what pain am I trying not to feel? That question is a knife, but it opens a door, because Taleb is the moment you step out of the cave and the sun hurts your eyes. You can unsee it. You can only walk forward into the second valley, where longing stops being a question and becomes a fire. Valley 2, love, Ishkru. If Taleb is the wound, Ishki is the fever. The seeker does simply want truth. They become possessed by it. And possession is the right word. The ego is no longer in charge. A young poet named Harun met an old dervish in a bathhouse courtyard. The man said almost nothing, yet Harun went home shaking, unable to sleep, hearing silence like thunder. He thought he was falling in love with a person. He was falling into an archetype, the anima, the inner image that lures consciousness toward the self. Jung knew this pattern. We project the divine onto a face, a teacher, a lover, an idea. The projection is not wrong. It's a bridge, but it burns. Ishq makes you irrational. You lose interest in reputation. Your old pleasures go tasteless. Your friendships rearrange. The world calls it instability. The mystics call it initiation. In alchemy, this is still nigredo, heat increasing until the sealed vessel sweats. The practical rule: don't bargain with the fire. If you keep one escape door, you will use it. Ishq also reveals a danger. Addiction disguised as devotion. The ego can turn love into another chain. Obsession with a guru, a partner, a mission. Anything that promises completion. The Sufis say, if your love makes you smaller, it is love. It's hunger. So the second valley tests motive. Do you want the beloved, or do you want relief? Do you want truth, or do you want a story where you win? Jung would say, watch for inflation. When the unconscious floods the psyche, the ego can swell and claim the fire as mine. That's how spiritual pride is born. The antidote is simple and humiliating. Service and discipline. You keep your promises. You clean your room. You do the boring practice. You stop performing your transformation. Because Ishq is not feelings. It is the force that breaks self-centeredness. And here's the strange gift. When the fire consumes your old identity, it also releases energy trapped in repression. Many bad habits were failed attempts at love, attempts to soothe separation. In Ishq, you begin to feel the original ache directly, without anesthesia. Then the fever clears, and a colder, sharper valley arrives. Knowledge, not information, but tasting. Valley 3, knowledge, marifa. After love burns the costume, you start seeing mechanisms, not theories, patterns. You notice how often your opinions are borrowed, how your identity is stitched from other people's approval. A teacher once handed his student a cup of salted water and said, describe the sea. The student tasted and answered, bitter. The teacher smiled, good. Now you know something from contact, not from books. Marifa is that contact. In Jungian terms, it's shadow integration. You stop exporting your darkness to enemies, exes, politicians, strangers online. You recognize it as your hunger for control, your envy, your cowardice, your cruelty, owned without self-hatred. This is albedo beginning, a whitening, a clearing. The mind becomes less noisy because it stops lying. Anxiety often drops when the psyche stops wasting energy on denial. Depression can lift when frozen grief is finally allowed to move. Practical work here is ruthless. Write down your 3 most repeated emotional triggers. Then ask, what part of me is this protecting? Marifa turns pain into data, then into wisdom. Marifa brings a sobering realization. Insight alone does free you. You can understand your wounds perfectly and still obey them. Knowledge that does change behavior is just a prettier cage. So the third valley demands embodiment. The Sufis would say, taste, then live the taste. Jung would say, make the unconscious conscious and act differently, or it returns as fate. This is where many seekers stall, mistaking awareness for transformation. A merchant named Rahim once swore he had conquered anger. Then a child knocked over his scales, and he shouted so loudly the market froze. That night he laughed, realizing, the work is proving you we're healed. It's catching the pattern 1 second sooner each time. This is albedo deepening, clarity expressed in small, repeatable acts. You pause before reacting. You apologize faster. You replace one compulsive habit with one deliberate breath. Tiny changes repeated rewire the psyche more than grand vows. And with this humility comes the 4th valley. Detachment, not escape from life, but freedom inside it. Valley 4. Detachment, istina. By now you've seen how desire drives you. Approval, control, comfort, distraction. Detachment doesn't kill desire. It loosens its leash. A widow named Soraya lost her shop in a flood. When neighbors came to console her, she poured tea and said, the river borrowed wood. I still have hands. She rebuilt, slower, calmer. Not because she felt nothing, but because she no longer believed anything was truly hers. Jung would call this a shift of identification. The ego stops clinging to roles, job title, status, body image, as if they were the self. You still play the roles, but you know they were costumes. That knowledge is quiet power. In alchemy, this is separatio, distinguishing gold from dross, essence from noise. Practically, istini shows up as fewer compulsions. You can enjoy pleasure without needing it. You can hear criticism without collapsing. You can be alone without feeling erased. This freedom is dangerous to consumer culture, to ideology, to any system that feeds on insecurity. But it also prepares you for the next shock. Realizing separation itself may be an illusion. Valley 5. Unity, to wid. Here the boundary between inner and outer thins. You notice how often life mirrors your psyche, how the conflict outside echoes the conflict within. Synchronicities multiply, meaning leaks through coincidence. A carpenter named Idris once spent years carving doors. One day he realized every door he made resembled the one in his childhood home, the one he slammed the night he left. He laughed, seeing how the psyche writes its story into the world. Jung called this the unus mundus, psyche and matter as 2 faces of one fabric. Tawhid is an idea of oneness. It's a lived shift. You stop feeling like an isolated fragment and start sensing participation in a larger pattern. Compassion often deepens here, not as virtue, but as recognition. Hurting another feels like striking your own reflection. Yet this valley hides a trap. The ego hears all is one and inflates. I am special, enlightened, chosen. There's not unity, it's grandiosity. True Tawhid dissolves the claimant. It leaves humility, wonder, and responsibility. And when that humility stabilizes, the path turns stranger still, into the valley where certainty itself collapses. Valley 6. Bewilderment, Hayrat. After unity comes confusion, not the confusion of ignorance, but of seeing too much. The neat answers that once comforted you dissolve. Every truth reveals its opposite. Every certainty shows its limits. A jurist named Kareem spent decades mastering theology. Late in life he admitted, "The closer I move to truth, the less I can define it." He hadn't lost faith. He had lost arrogance. The Sufis say hayrat is holy astonishment, the mind kneeling before reality's depth. Jung touched this during his confrontation with the unconscious. Symbols contradicted themselves. Dreams spoke in paradox. He realized psyche isn't a machine to decode, but a mystery to dialogue with. This valley feels unstable. You may question your path, your beliefs, even your personality. But this is multiplicatio in alchemy, the stage where the work expands, not simplifies. Complexity returns, but now it's alive. Practically, Hayrat teaches surrender of premature conclusions. You listen more, you rush less, you accept not knowing. And strangely, this humility frees energy, once spent defending certainty. Beyond this bewilderment waits the final crossing, the death that gives life. Valley 7. Annihilation. Fauna. Here the journey stops being about improvement and becomes disappearance. Not physical death, identity death. The story of me loosens until it feels like a character you once played. An old gardener named Nabal was asked the secret of his serenity. He answered, "I stopped trying to be someone." He still worked, laughed, mourned, but the tight knot of self-importance had dissolved. Experience passed through him like wind through an open gate. Jung would call this the ego yielding to the self, the center larger than personality. The Sufis call it dying before you die. In alchemy, this is rubido, the red completion where the substance no longer fights its own nature. Fauna does make you passive. It makes you responsive. Without the constant need to defend identity, you act more directly, love more freely, and waste less energy on image management. Practically, it looks ordinary. Speaking truth without rehearsing how you sound, helping without tracking credit, resting without guilt. Small dissolutions repeated until the old self feels like a dream you once mistook for life. Yet annihilation is not the end. Something unexpected follows. Return. After Fana comes Baka. Return. The self dissolves, yet life continues. You still wake, eat, work, argue, love. The difference is subtle but absolute. You are no longer acting to become someone. You are acting because action itself is natural. A midwife named Salma delivered hundreds of children. When asked why she never burned out, she said, "Because none of them are mine. Yet each arrival feels like my own breath returning." That is Baka, participation without possession. Jung describes something similar in late individuation. The person becomes a collaborator with the psyche, rather than its commander. Purpose feels less like ambition and more like alignment. You follow what wants to unfold, not what flatters your image. In alchemy, this is the philosopher's stone not as object but as orientation, the capacity to turn experience into meaning. Suffering still comes, but it no longer defines you. Pleasure still comes, but it no longer imprisons you. And now the secret reveals itself. The valleys were never linear steps. They spiral, repeating at deeper levels each time life tests you again. Here is the hidden truth the mystics rarely say plainly. You never finish the path. A new loss can throw you back into quest. A new love can ignite ishq again. A betrayal can reopen shadow work overnight. The spiral continues, not as failure, but as refinement. A sailor once asked a dervish, "When do the storms stop?" The dervish replied, "When you stop needing the sea to be calm." Awakening does remove difficulty. It changes your relationship to it. Anxiety becomes a signal instead of an enemy. Habit becomes material for awareness instead of proof of weakness. This is why ancient wisdom matters now. Our age offers infinite stimulation but little initiation. We numb discomfort instead of using it. Yet every irritation, craving, or fear is an invitation to cross a valley again, consciously this time. The practical rule is simple. When life tightens, don't ask, "Why me?" Ask, "Which valley is this?" That question alone can turn suffering into movement. And with that, we return to the flame where the journey began. So we end where we began, with the moth and the flame. Not as a story from the past, but as a mirror. You are already circling something, an unanswered question, a habit you know must die, a truth you avoid naming. The flame is not outside you. It is the pressure of your own becoming. The 7 valleys are not distant deserts. They are daily crossings. Every time you face discomfort instead of numbing it, you enter quest. Every time you choose truth over image, you step into love. Every time you see your shadow and don't run, you gain knowledge. Every time you release control, you taste detachment. Every time you sense connection, you glimpse unity. Every time certainty collapses, you pass through bewilderment. And every time you act without defending a persona, you practice annihilation. Awakening isn't an achievement. It's a series of small burnings that leave you lighter each time. The flame is calling. The only question left is the same one the mystics asked. Will you keep circling, or will you enter?